Yes, how are we all? I hope all is well. My name is Sachin, and this is the Total Cricket Podcast, episode 29. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the second test between England and the West Indies, so let's get right into it. West Indies won this game by 5 wickets, and in doing so, they levelled the series 1-all. Yes, you heard that right. What an incredible victory for the West Indies. I think this one rivals that record chase against Australia as their best test win in the last 20 years. No one could have expected this after the drubbing they received in the first game, and I don't think anyone thought they were capable of this, most importantly. But this was a fantastic test match. It was decided in the fifth last over of the game. You don't see that too often. And also, there were so many ebbs and flows throughout the game. It was a great advertisement for why Test cricket is the best form of the game. Absolutely riveting test match. Not only that, but it was a great result for cricket. The West Indies have been struggling for so many years in Test cricket, so it was great to see them have a result like this, and hopefully this results in a bit more of an upward trajectory for the team. Now let's get into the team news. And England, they made the one change, definitely a surprise. Chris Woakes coming back in for Toby Rowland Jones. Toby Rowland Jones did absolutely nothing wrong, but really, I think England going for Chris Woakes because they see him as a part of their first 11 for the Ashes later this year. And really, I believe that if England were picking a team that gave them the best possible chance to win this game, they would have gone with Toby Rowland Jones because Chris Woakes is a little bit underdone. He's only played one county game since coming back from injury. So certainly this was a case of not a particularly important series for England as far as they're concerned in their priority list. And going forward, the most important series for them, the Ashes, that definitely dictated this selection. And the West Indies, they made two changes with Shannon Gabriel and Devendra Bishu coming in for Miguel Cummins and Alzari Joseph. Now let's go to the recap. And England, they won the toss again, and they elected to bat, but only managed a paltry 258 in their first innings. And it could have been a lot worse if the West Indies had held on to their catches. But it was Ben Stokes with his sixth Test century, and Joe Root with yet another 50 that helped England get to that total. But apart from them, there was very little resistance from the batsmen. Kemar Roach and Shannon Gabriel both got four-fillers. Jason Holder and Devendra Bishu picked up a wicket apiece. West Indies, in reply, much better than the first Test match. They got 427, taking a first innings lead of 169. Craig Brathwaite made his sixth Test century. He got 134. Shai Hope made his maiden Test century. He got 147. There were also contributions from Jermaine Blackwood with 49 and Jason Holder with 43 that pushed the West Indies over that 400 mark. Excellent effort by the West Indies there. England bowlers, James Anderson, yet another fifer in England. Moeen Ali, he went wicketless. Ben Stokes, he got a couple of wickets. And Chris Woakes and Stuart Broad, they got a wicket apiece. And there was also the run out of Jermaine Blackwood. England, in the second innings, they did a great job to get right back into the game. 490 for 8 declared. And there were a lot of contributions here. Mark Stoneman getting his maiden Test 50. Joe Root following up his 50 in the first innings with yet another here. Dawid Malan getting 50s in consecutive games. That was a real grind from Dawid Malan. Ben Stokes following up his 100 in the first innings with a 50. And Moeen Ali getting 84. Chris Woakes getting 61. Those two really pushed England really past the 200 lead into the 300 lead to a position where they were actually able to declare. And the West Indies, they were set 322 to chase as a result. Now, the West Indies bowlers, Shannon Gabriel picked up a couple. Kemar Roach was wicketless this time around. Jason Holder was the pick of the bowlers. He got 2 wickets. Roston Chase, he got 3. And Devendra Bishu also picked up 1. And in the chase, the West Indies, well, this was pretty clinical from the West Indies. Craig Brathwaite, once again, doing the job, nearly getting 2 centuries in the game. He got 95. Shai Hope getting another century in the game. What an effort by him. His second Test century, would you believe? And he was not out at the end, hitting the winning runs, 118 not out. Roston Chase and Jermaine Blackwood also chipped in to make sure there were no hiccups with 30 and 41, respectively. The English bowlers, well, they really struggled on that fifth day pitch, quite surprisingly. Jimmy Anderson, wicketless Stuart Broad, just the one for him. Moeen Ali, 2 wickets. Chris Woakes, 1 wicket. And Ben Stokes, with just the 5 overs, did not pick up a wicket. And that was that. So now let's move on to the breakdown, and I'll begin with the West Indies. Now, in my first test review, I said that the West Indies are not a competitive test team. So I think an apology is in order. I felt that I was vindicated in saying that because at the end of the day, if you look at the West Indies in test matches over the last 20 years, they have a win-loss ratio of 0.365, and that drops dramatically away from home to 0.158. This was just their fourth test victory in the last 20 years away from home, excluding Zimbabwe and Bangladesh. And under Jason Holder's captaincy before this game, they played 16 games, won just the 2, drawn 3, and lost 11. So really, this team has been struggling for so many years to be a competitive test nation. And there have been these occasional great results for them sprinkled in, but they've been few and far between. And I'm still cautious to proclaim that the West Indies are back because we've seen some false dawns before. After their World T20 wins in 2012, in 2016, what really changed? And then, if you remember the recent test series in the West Indies against Pakistan, they won the second test, and you thought, could this be it for the West Indies? They got thrashed in the third game. So there have been these false dawns for the West Indies, and I hope this is not another one of them. Really, it's about nurturing the talent that is there because there are some talented players. It's about getting more experience, and it's also about making sure that your best players are in the team because I still feel that this is not the strongest 11 that the West Indies could pick. So if all those things come into order, then hopefully we should see the West Indies improve consistently rather than just the one-off occasional win sprinkled in amongst a lot of mediocrity. So with that being said, I'll start with the West Indies batting and how good was Craig Brathwaite in this game. 134 in the first innings. I think it was just fatigue, to be honest, when he was bowled. He'd been out there for over 6 hours. And in the second innings, although he was lucky, dropped on 4, he certainly made the most of it. Got to 95. He'll be very disappointed that he couldn't get back-to-back centuries, just slashing at one off Moeen Ali. Really, he'll be disappointed with that. A very uncharacteristic stroke for Craig Brathwaite. But what I love about Craig Brathwaite is that he's a limited batsman, but he acknowledges that and he plays to his strength. And that is his concentration, grinding the bowlers into the ground and then picking them off, particularly off his pads. And what I really liked is that he also mixed in a little bit of calculated risk into his innings, particularly taking to Moeen Ali coming down the ground and hitting him over mid-wicket. I thought that was really good, a sign of development in Brathwaite's game to open up his scoring options a bit more. It was really good to see. But this guy is a cornerstone of the West Indies batting. He's a decent batsman, no doubt. And hopefully now he can press on to become an elite test opener. Because the West Indies need him. He's a rare breed now, an old-fashioned opener. And definitely at the age of 24, he's got a long career still ahead of him. He's almost played 40 test matches now, so you would think he's going to play 100 plus. Craig Brathwaite definitely going to be huge if the West Indies are to get back to where they once were. Now, Kieran Powell, in this game, he was poor once again. He managed just the 5 in the first innings, 23 in the second innings, nicked off into the slips on both occasions. We saw the technical issues with the angled bat. And for Kieran Powell, he just hasn't delivered since he's come back. It's really as simple as that. He's played 5 tests. If you remember, he was recalled against Pakistan. In 10 innings he's played, he hasn't got a 50, and he averages 21.9. That is not quite good enough, and I feel like if he fails again in the third test, West Indies will certainly look elsewhere for a more reliable partner to Craig Brathwaite. Now, Kyle Hope, he once again struggled. He got the 4, just the 3 in the first innings, until he was caught off route, bowled by Anderson. And then in the second innings, he was desperately unlucky, to be fair. It was Craig Brathwaite who hit the ball straight back at Stuart Broad, who dropped it, but then the ricochet went onto the stumps, and as such, Kyle Hope was run out at the bowler's end for a duck. But really, Kyle Hope, despite that bad luck, he looked awful batting, just like he did really in the first innings. I talked about the fact that coming into this tour, he played 31 first-class games, and he just had the one century to his name. And he's 28 years old. He's not like some young talent like his brother. So really, Kyle Hope at number 3 for the West Indies. This is not a long-term solution. He was worked over by Anderson. It was a brute of a ball from Anderson, an in-swinger that definitely surprised Kyle Hope. The classic Jimmy Anderson setup. He nicked off to Root, and as I said, pretty unlucky in the second innings. But nonetheless, Kyle Hope, really, I don't see him being around too much longer. And when you consider Darren Bravo is there and should be available in the next Test series for the West Indies, I think I know who I would go with. Now on to Shai Hope, and well, did he announce himself to the cricketing world or not in this Test? Shai Hope, absolutely fantastic. The first player to score hundreds in both innings of a first-class game at Headingley. What an incredible achievement for Shai Hope. And as I said before, he's shown that he's a talented batsman, but he just hadn't delivered in Test cricket before coming into this game, having played the 11 games and averaging only 19 with just the 150. The numbers weren't there to back up his obvious talent, which he has shown more in ODI cricket. To be fair, he averages over 40 in ODIs, but finally here, his talent was translated into runs, and he was absolutely brilliant. I thought the shots he played were quite breathtaking. It was a joy to watch Shai Hope, and it seemed to me like once he got over that hurdle, once he got that 50 in the first innings, he just kicked on, and he looked a different player from then on. To the guy who was a little bit tentative when he was starting his innings, he just looked so confident. He really looked like a guy who'd been playing for a number of years, and this guy at number 4 is definitely the future for the West Indies. What I loved about it is that he was able to get big runs. In your first Test 100, he didn't just stop there. He went on to get 147. And I think he will be disappointed that he didn't get 150. He was out the first ball of the third day, caught behind off Anderson. And in the second innings also, he was there to finish the job. He didn't just get the 100, he scored the winning runs. So that tells to me that this guy is hungry for runs. He has the application to really succeed at this level. And for Shai Hope for the West Indies, he is the great hope, funnily enough. Pardon the pun. Now Roston Chase, he once again didn't quite have the best Test match with the bat in the first innings. He was out for just the 5. He was caught in the slips. And then in the second, he, to be fair, got 30 runs, and it took a great catch from Mason Crane to dismiss him. But for Roston Chase, the batsman, he hasn't had the best time of it so far, but we've seen that prior to this series, in the last year for the West Indies, he had been their best batsman, getting 3 Test hundreds in his first 10 games. For Chase, I think he's found it a little bit difficult to adapt to the English conditions. I believe he's never played even a first-class game in England, so I can imagine it's been a little bit hard for him to adapt, but certainly there are things for him to work on in his game. I feel that he needs to probably use his feet more. I know he's a tall guy, but I think he's a little bit crease-bound at the moment, and against guys like Anderson, that's a dangerous thing to do. So for Roston Chase, just a few things to work on, but this is a good experience for him. He's clearly got the temperament, got the talent to play at this level. He just needs to be a bit more refined, and I'm sure he will be in years to come. Now, Jermaine Blackwood, how entertaining was Jermaine Blackwood in this game? Wow, he got 49 in the first innings, and then he ran himself out incredibly. And then in the second innings, he got 41 or 45 to really make sure there were no hiccups for the West Indies. But what I found possibly the funniest moment I have seen in cricket was when there were 4 runs to win. He was facing Moeen Ali, and he took off his helmet. No cap, no nothing. No protection for his head. He wanted to hit the winning runs with the utmost arrogance and just the audacity to do that. I thought it was hilarious, the confidence with which Blackwood did that. And then, even more funnily enough, he was out-stumped to a wild hoik with just the 2 runs to get. And unfortunately, he fell flat on his face in that attempt to basically look like a boss. But really, Jermaine Blackwood, that aside, he's a guy that adds a lot to this team. I like him. He's a good catcher, one of the better fielders in this team. But his batting is really proactive. It's fearless, and he throws caution to the wind. Just does Jermaine Blackwood. He is so high risk. He really doesn't care about the fact that it's a test match. And obviously, he's got a great range of strokes, good hand-eye coordination. But if he wants to make more sizable contributions in the future, he's going to have to curb the risk a little bit. Playing such a high risk game, you're unlikely to make a lot of 50s and 100s. But to be fair to Blackwood, he has 110 50s in his 24 test matches, averaging 33. At number 6, that's very respectable. So he definitely adds a lot to this team. And it still amazes me how he was dropped for that Pakistan series, because he adds a different element to that middle order. Now, Shane Dowrich once again struggled with the bat. He got a golden duck in the first innings, caught by Root, at first slip of Anderson in the first innings, and then he wasn't required to face a ball when he came out in the second innings. But for Dowrich, that's now 3 single-figure scores in this series. Not only that, he made a bit of a meal of the catch where the West Indies dropped David Malan, where it was really his catch, but at the last minute he pulled out and left Kieran Powell with really no chance to grab that catch. So his wicket keeping isn't the best. We've seen him also in past series make mistakes with the gloves. To me, Shane Dowrich is also on thin ice, and I see a recall for Dinesh Ramdin not too far in the future, if I'm being honest. Just with Dowrich, again, crease bound, and a guy who looks very, very unsure of himself against the fast bowlers. The runs that he has scored have mainly been off the spinners. He's pretty good against the spinners, but off the fast bowlers, just looks really, really tentative. And so for Dowrich, I don't see this ending particularly well. Now, Jason Holder, he came to the party with the bat. It was good to see with that 43 in the first innings. Jason Holder is a very talented batsman, averages 29. He's got 106 50s in his 25 tests. And there was one cover drive he played off Stuart Broad that was picture perfect. And you think this guy's batting at 8? He's got the talent to be a good batsman, like a good number 7. And that's the thing for Jason Holder. It's about developing from a bits and pieces player to a proper all-rounder. So hopefully that can happen sooner rather than later, because he is a very talented cricketer at the end of the day. So that's it for the West Indies batting. It was a lot better. Obviously, they were farcically bad in the first game. Didn't last 50 overs in either of the innings, but this was a lot better. There's still some question marks about people like Kieran Powell, Kyle Hope, and Shane Dowrich, but the rest of the batsmen definitely did stand up. There was great application. I felt there was also more authority they played with, and this is what the West Indies have to do. This was the first test match, first time in, I believe it's 25 test matches, in which they've scored 400 in an innings, which is astonishing. They need to be racking up scores of 300 plus with a lot more consistency if they are to be a competitive team more often than not. So I would say that this is the blueprint for the West Indies to go off. Now into their bowling, and I thought they were absolutely fantastic with the ball in the first innings. They faded a little bit in the second innings, but this was a much improved performance from the bowlers as well. Coming into the tour, we were talking about this is their strength, and it didn't show in the first game, but certainly in this game, I think we saw why it is their strength and why they are capable of winning games. It's their bowling. If it bowls well, they can bowl people out pretty cheaply, which brings their batsmen into the game, allows them to have an opportunity to win games. Kemar Roach, he left off from where he began in the first test, and he picked up a fourfer. He did a really good job in this one, and he was desperately unlucky to not get a fifer. I believe that Ben Stokes was dropped twice off his bowling, but Kemar Roach, from the guy who in his last series, that was against Australia in the 3 tests, he didn't take any wickets, to now having been the best West Indies bowler over these 2 test matches. He's definitely come back to the Kemar Roach of old. I like the way he's bowling. He's not as quick as he once was, but now you're seeing that shape that he's getting. He's getting the ball to talk, to nip off the seam, to swing a bit. That angle that he gets, when he bowls around the wicket to the left-handers and nips it away, or with that angle into the right-handers. It's very challenging when he's at his best, and certainly Kemar Roach was on top of his game in the first innings. The second innings, he wasn't great, though. He faded. There was a lot of short stuff, and it just looked like he was a little bit down on pace as well. Really, the whole West Indies bowling lineup struggled a bit in the second innings. Perhaps it's just the sheer fact that he hadn't bowled that amount of overs for a long time, but hopefully he can do better in the second innings next time around, Kemar Roach. Shannon Gabriel, I was amazed that he didn't play the first game. I know that he's had major issues with his rhythm and his fitness, but you've got to pick Shannon Gabriel. He bowls 145, and it's so easy. His action, you think he just basically strolls in, rolls his arm over, and he bowls 145. And he's tall as well, so he really pushes the batsman onto the back foot, getting the ball to really jump off a length. Similar to Morne Morkel, I feel, Shannon Gabriel, and he was the pick of the bowlers in the first innings with his 4 for 51. Absolutely fantastic. Also should have had Joe Root, but he was dropped by Kieran Powell, an absolute sitter. So both the fast bowlers really should have had fifers. But in the second innings as well, Gabriel did a pretty decent job. He was able to remove Stoneman, and once again, Joe Root. He was this time able to get Joe Root. I think Gabriel is a guy that has come a long way as a bowler from when he started, and that's the biggest thing that's holding him back, his injuries and his rhythm issues. Now, in the first innings, he didn't bowl a single no ball, but in the second innings, those issues sort of reared their head a bit. 10 no balls in the second innings. So, definitely for Shannon Gabriel, it's about getting that process right. Obviously, for him, when he starts to have problems, things just go completely wayward. But whatever he needs to do to make sure that his rhythm is on point, he needs to do. Because at the end of the day, that's the one thing stopping him from being an elite test bowler. So hopefully for Shannon Gabriel's sake and the West Indies' sake, he can really get those issues out of his game. Now, Jason Holder, I thought he bowled absolutely beautifully in this game. He picked up 1 for 45 in the first innings and 2 for 95 in the second innings. He really deserved more. There were once again some drop catches off his bowling. But really, Jason Holder did what Jason Holder does, and that's clog up an end in both innings. His economy rate was under 3 and over. He bowled 15 maidens in the game, and that's what he does. His best attribute is his accuracy, and that's what he did. He just bowled it on the same place. He didn't get bored. He just kept persisting, and he was rewarded to an extent. But I feel that one of the main reasons why he doesn't get more wickets is because he doesn't have a lot of pace. He bowls 125 to 130, and when he's his height, 6'6", 6'7", if he could just be even 5 kilometers quicker, he would take a lot more wickets. It is quite surprising for a West Indies bowler to just not have any pace in him, particularly a guy who is so physically gifted as Jason Holder. But that is unfortunately, I think, the biggest reason why he doesn't quite take as many wickets as he would like. But really, Jason Holder is a talented cricketer. Some people seem to think that he doesn't offer anything to this team, but he's a good bowler and he's a good batsman. But at the moment, his contributions aren't quite there as a real all-rounder. There's so much promise in his play, but he just needs to become more consistent in both facets to be a true all-rounder. But you've got to give the guy some sympathy. This guy has been given the job that no one really wants. It's one of the toughest jobs in cricket to captain this West Indies team, and he's done it without a word of complaint. And yes, he does make some bizarre tactical choices, but as a leader of men, I don't think you can criticize Jason Holder. He's done a real good job to stabilize that part of West Indies. There has been now a stable captain for the past few years. So for him, at such an early stage in his career, to be put in this position, it has hindered his development, I believe. So you've got to give him some sympathy for that. And I believe that as the West Indies, if they do start to win more games, he'll be able to then, that pressure will just be relieved a bit more. He can then really develop as a player. I think we will see that in the future from Jason Holder. Now, Roston Chase, once again, did a good job with the ball. He's only a part-timer, but he was able to pick up three second innings wickets. And the thing about Roston Chase is that he basically just rolls his arm over, but to be fair to him, he does get the ball to spin from time to time, and he was able to get some pretty decent wickets. David Malan, Ben Stokes, and Johnny Bairstow, and particularly the double strike of Ben Stokes and David Malan really put West Indies back into the game because the game was slipping away at that point. So Roston Chase offers quite a bit with his part-time spin, which is why even though his batting hasn't been quite up to the standard that we've been accustomed to from him, he's still a valuable member of the team with his bowling. Nothing more than a part-time, I believe, but hey, he's getting wickets. So I think he's still definitely a good guy to have in the team. Now, Devendra Bishu, this was quite interesting, the way that Jason Holder used Bishu. He didn't bowl a lot in the first innings, only bowled the 6 overs, and it wasn't until the fourth day in which he really started to get through some overs. But for Bishu, he didn't bowl too badly. I thought he got a couple of wickets in the game, and with Bishu, I feel he struggles a little bit just bowling that long hop a bit too often. You do see that from Devendra Bishu. And the thing is, he doesn't really have a googly, so he is quite predictable, and guys are able to get him away when he does deliver a bit of a rank half tracker. But certainly, he's still a good leg spinner, and particularly going to Lords in the next game, I'm sure he'll keep his place. And definitely as well, also the fact that he can play as a night watchman and hang around a bit with the bat also helps for the West Indies. So that's it for the West Indies. What a victory for them. And I have my fingers crossed that they can at least replicate the performance that they had in this game. This showed that if they play to their best, or at least close to their best, then they can be a competitive Test team. Now, the two last things I want to talk about for the West Indies are the fielding. They dropped 7 catches in this game. They didn't make it easy for themselves. If they had taken even 2 of those catches, they would have won this game in a canter. So really, that has to be fixed for the West Indies. The West Indies have been a dreadful fielding team now for a while. That is something that has to improve. They aren't going to get away with it in too many games. So the real repeat offenders were Kieran Powell and Kyle Hope. They both dropped 2 catches, and funnily enough, they also didn't perform with the bat. So that's not a good sign for those two. But really, the West Indies, they just need to be better in the slips. They really struggled there with their catches. And quite frankly, they should have bowled England out for a lot less in that first innings than 258. It should have been 150. So that's really the big thing for the West Indies to work on in this game. There were so many drop catches in this game, 13 to be exact. As I said, 7 from the West Indies, 6 from England, and incredibly 434 runs were added by batsmen after they were dropped. That is absolutely unbelievable. The catching in this game was not up to Test standard. And the other thing I want to talk about is Jason Holder's tactics. Again, slightly questionable from Jason Holder. I thought particularly Craig Brathwaite bowling the first over after tea on the 4th day was really bizarre. Yes, England were starting to come back into the game, but it's not like you're bowling for a declaration. You're still well in the game, so that was really weird to set the tone for that session by bowling Craig Brathwaite in the first over. That definitely boggled my mind. The way Jason Holder also preferred Roston Chase to Devendra Bishu, it seemed, the part-timer over the specialist spinner, was definitely a bit weird. I know that there are a lot of left-handers in the England lineup, so you like the off-spinner bowling to them, but there was a lot of rough outside the left-handers off stump, and so Devendra Bishu could have used that to spin the ball back in to the batsman. So I still don't understand why Bishu didn't bowl more than he did. So definitely, once again, Jason Holder's bowling choices, perplexing to say the least. But as I said before, you can't question what he brings as a leader of men to this team. So that's it for the West Indies. Now on to England. And this was a shocking defeat for England. Once again, they win the first test and then they lose the second. The same thing happened against South Africa. The same thing happened against Bangladesh. The inconsistency in this team is definitely worrying. And ahead of the Ashes, to lose this game in the manner they did, with West Indies giving them countless opportunities in the field, definitely alarm bells should be ringing for England. After the canter of the first game, this was really a stunning defeat for England. And it was really brought about by the batting in the first innings. I felt just nowhere near enough runs. And I'll start with Alistair Cook. Well, for once, he actually didn't make runs in this game. 11 in the first innings and 23 in the second innings. Both times he was caught behind the wickets. And definitely to Cook, there is that angle of the right armour around the wickets, getting it to then nip away. That definitely troubles him. We saw that with Morné Morkel in the South Africa series. But we know Alistair Cook, the guy got a double hundred in the last game. He is unquestionably England's best opener. And the guy has been doing it for over a decade now. You cannot question him. The thing is, he failed in this game, and the others didn't pick up the slack, and that's the issue for England, the dependence on Alistair Cook and Joe Root. Now, Mark Stoneman, he was a lot better in this game. I think he's improved in every innings he played, and certainly the England selectors will be breathing a sigh of relief seeing his performances in this game. He was doing well in the first innings, but then a little bit of a lazy shot, just hanging the bat out there to Kemar Roach and got an inside edge. In the second innings, though, that was a gritty 50. In trying circumstances, facing that deficit of 169 in the first innings, he was able to grind it out, 52 off 124 before an absolute beauty from Shannon Gabriel got rid of him, much like the ball that got him from Kemar Roach in the first test. But Mark Stoneman, the thing I liked was his application in this game. We've seen England guilty of throwing their wicket away a lot in recent past, but definitely Mark Stoneman showed good application that you need at the opening slot, and he showed pretty sound technique, I felt. And really, he, I felt, has now booked his place in the Ashes tour with these performances. England have nowhere to go ultimately. They almost have to pray that Stoneman can deliver. But for Stoneman, it's still difficult to say whether he's going to be successful at this level for sure, but certainly this test was a lot more promising. Now, Tom Westley, definite huge question marks about him after this game. 4 consecutive single-digit scores for Tom Westley, and the best way to describe his batting is airy-fairy, all style, no substance. He plays some lovely strokes, Tom Westley, but wow is he loose technically. In the first innings, just like in the first test, trapped in front by Kemar Roach, and in the second, a wild slash outside off stump, and he was caught behind the wicket. Really, you can't be doing that as a number 3. You can't be so loose when you're usually coming in against the new ball. Really, he has been retained for the third test, which puts England in a really tough position, because if he doesn't perform in that test match, then they have to drop him and basically bring someone in fresh for that Ashes test, the first test at the Gabba. So we're going to see people like Alex Hales, even Gary Ballance. I believe that he shouldn't play for England again, but he might be called up, such as the real state that England are in the number 3 slot. Maybe even Ian Bell, he might get a call up. That's a bit of a left field selection, but huge issues for England with this, as I believe that Tom Westley has showed he's not up to the standard required. Now, on to the next player, which is Joe Root, getting his 50 as usual, the 12th consecutive test in which he has got a 50, equaling the record. But once again for Joe Root, wasn't able to convert. He got 2 50s in this game, but in the first innings, a bit of an odd dismissal, trying to paddle the issue and getting it toe end to Blackwood at slip. And then in the second innings, he was out, caught behind the wicket of Shannon Gabriel. Disappointing for Joe Root. We know his conversion rate's an issue. We saw him get 100 in the last game, but this game was sort of back to the norm with Joe Root. Now he has 13 hundreds and 32 50s at the test level. That is a shocking conversion rate. But at the end of the day, he's still a superb batsman to have the consistency that he does. He averages 54. He's just an elite test batsman, but this is the one thing that he's struggling with at the moment, Joe Root, just converting those scores into hundreds. You really can't put your finger on it. It's almost inexplicable. But what I will say is that he has been very lucky. How many times has he been dropped in this summer? In the first innings, he was dropped on 8. He was lucky to survive there. And also in the second innings, he was dropped. I believe he was dropped 3 times in this game. He has been lucky in this summer, and I think that Joe Root has been giving a few chances away, particularly behind the wicket. We know how good he is off that back foot punch and the cover drive, but that's also been an issue for him, giving up chances to the slips. It's just people haven't been able to hold on. But really, that's something that he needs to look at. But to be fair, in Australia, where the Ashes will be, there's not going to be as much lateral movement, and he'll probably be able to get away with those. England, obviously, you get a lot more seam movement, so it is a lot more riskier to drive in England. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if he did turn the corner in the Ashes with this one on much more batting-friendly pitches in Australia. Now on to David Malan, and he got his second consecutive 50. In the first innings, he was bowled, chopping on off Jason Holder, but in the second innings, much improved. A gritty 61 off 186. What I liked about this from David Malan, much like the 50 made in the last game, was the application that he showed. Once again, I think he'll be disappointed to miss out on 100. Both times he's got out to Roston Chase, so that's not great. But the thing about Malan is that he's sort of gone against his nature. He's really a one-day specialist, but he's been able to grind it out and bat time, which again is a good quality to have. And looking at David Malan, it's funny, he's a left-hander, but unlike almost all left-handers, he doesn't really cover drive the ball well. So for him, it's really the leg side game that really comes into play. So interestingly for him, he sort of has to pick his balls to score from because he is a bit limited on the offside. But again, just like Craig Brathwaite, know your limitations and work around them. Make your strengths even bigger strengths. So positive signs for David Malan. He as well, I feel, has booked his spot on the tour down under. So that is another thing for England. Still with that other opener, 3 and 5. I wouldn't say any of them are definitely the solutions, but Stoneman and Malan have shown enough to stay in the team for at least a few more games. Now, Ben Stokes, once again, such a high impact player, elite all rounder, Ben Stokes. What I liked about Ben Stokes was that, once again, he was just fearless. The counter attack that he plays with, fantastic. He definitely rode his luck. He was dropped 3 times. Very lucky, to be honest. Shouldn't have got the runs that he did, but he made the most of his chances. And wow, breathtaking innings in the first innings when you consider that he came to the crease with England 4 for 71 and he got them to a very respectable score. And then in the second innings, he helped them push the lead up with another 50. Ben Stokes has all the shots. We know that. And the guy keeps on delivering. What an asset he is for this England team. He's going to be huge for them in the Ashes. If they're to win, then Ben Stokes is going to have a fantastic series. Now, Jonny Bairstow, disappointing with the bat, Jonny Bairstow. He was out caught behind the wicket in the first innings for 2, and then in the second innings, he was bowled by Roston Chase for 18. Now, Jonny Bairstow hasn't had the best of summers with the bat, hasn't scored a century, just the 350s, averaging the low 30s. It's been a disappointing summer on the whole for Jonny Bairstow so far. He had such an incredible year last year, didn't he, Jonny Bairstow? But a little lukewarm this year for him. I can't really put my finger on it, to be honest. At the start, he was batting at 5, which I felt is too high for him. Now at number 7, that's his position. But really with Bairstow, hopefully now we see him really get back to where he was. I think the thing for him is perhaps he's come in a bit late when England are looking to push the run rate up, and he's really sacrificed himself for the team. That, I think there's an element of truth to that. But a little bit of a tough patch for Jonny Bairstow, and England will definitely be hoping he can get out of that rut very soon. Now, Moeen Ali, doing what Moeen Ali does, continues to deliver as an all-round cricketer. He only managed the 22 in the first innings, caught at point, the usual sort of flash from Moeen Ali, a shot that really was a bit of a nothing shot. You do get that with Moeen Ali sometimes. He doesn't really hold back. He's always going to go after his shots, and that was definitely a little bit loose from him. But in the second innings, a breathtaking 84 off 93 to really put England into a very strong position, it seemed, to be able to set West Indies 322. But the thing about Moeen Ali is he has all the shots in the book. To be batting at number 8, he is not a number 8. He just isn't. But such is the depth in England's team that they can afford to have him there. And he's done great things for them this summer. His cover drive is one of the better looking cover drives in world cricket. He can score off his pads. He can play off the back foot, front foot. He's just got all the shots in the book. Yes, his technique is a little bit loose, but hey, he's a number 8 at the end of the day, right? Now, Chris Wokes did a good job with the bat on his return. 61 not out he made. He's not the biggest hitter of the ball, but he's got a solid technique, good shots, particularly on the offside. This is a guy batting at number 9 who has 9 first-class hundreds. England's batting depth is just ridiculous. And for Chris Wokes, definitely it helps his cause that he is an asset with the bat. Now, England's batting, if I had to sum it up, wasn't much change from the norm in the first innings. Cook didn't get runs, and so they weren't able really to get runs on the whole. But in the second innings, it was good to see Stoneman and Malan step up and help out the usual suspects. This is what England are going to have to do if they're going to be a better team, if they're going to be a more consistent test team, because their batting is just so reliant on Cook and Root. If they want to be more consistent at home as well, where they are losing a few too many tests for my liking, the rest of the batting has to continue to deliver, so they will hope that that can really be something to go on with. But the issue for England in this game wasn't so much the batting. Obviously, the first innings batting was pretty average, but I felt the bowling and the fielding were the things that really let them down in this game. Jimmy Anderson, once again, another fifer in England. He's just unstoppable in these conditions. The in-swinger, the out-swinger, he puts it on a string. He doesn't have to be quick because he just gets the ball to talk. A classic Anderson display this was, and as per usual with Anderson, all 5 wickets were caught behind the wicket. But in the second innings, he went wicketless. He's 3 away from 500 test wickets, but he was not able to get any closer in that second innings, and he was a bit disappointing in this second innings. Perhaps the signs of age. He's 35 years old, Jimmy. Perhaps is he able to bowl as many overs at an elite level as he once was? That's definitely a question. I also felt that, to be fair, the pitch wasn't as abrasive as I thought it would be at the end, but still, I think England, Anderson getting no wickets was a big issue for England in that second innings. Now, Stuart Broad, I thought he was desperately unlucky in this game. He had 4 catches dropped off his bowling, although, to be fair, one of that was himself, a caught and bowled, which actually did result in the run-out of Kyle Hope. But he got the 1 wicket in the first innings. A little bit expensive, I thought, not quite his best, giving a few too many half volleys. In the second innings, he was much improved. I thought he bowled a lot better and was desperately unlucky not to get Craig Brathwaite early on. The issue for Stuart Broad, I see, though, why he's not getting as many wickets is, I think he's lost his outswinger, I believe, which is quite bizarre because that used to be his stock delivery. But now he usually angles the ball into the right-hander, gets it to swing in, but he's lost that outswinger. And people have talked about a number of reasons why that might be the case. The fact that he's not quite getting his wrist behind the ball, and also the fact that he's been bowling a lot of cutters, bowling in the subcontinent a lot, and that's the reason why he's just not quite getting his hand behind the ball, and so the ball isn't quite coming out right to be able to get it to outswing. But that's a big issue for Stuart Broad. If he's going to be as effective as he can be, he needs to rediscover that outswing, I feel. Now, Moeen Ali was actually pretty average in this game bowling. With Moeen Ali, he's not a holding bowler. He's either going to get a lot of wickets, going to go for a lot of runs, or, to be honest, quite often both. Now, in the first innings, he was pretty poor, and in the second innings, he wasn't much better. This was probably the first test of the summer in which his bowling was just really not up to the mark, and why he's not still an elite spinner. He's a decent spinner, but he's not an elite spinner. He's a great all-round cricketer, but there's a reason why he's still not up there with the best all-rounders in the world. He's just a little tier below. Unfortunately, he doesn't quite have the control. It's improved a lot, I must say, but it's still not quite there. And we know that he doesn't really have variety to his bowling. He sort of bowls the same ball every time. And the thing that he usually really benefits from is from the fast bowlers really taking out the opposition batsman. And so the batsmen sort of feel that they have to attack Moeen Ali, and as such, they fall to him. But in this game, the West Indies batsmen were able to get after the English fast bowlers, so there wasn't that sense against Moeen Ali of, we have to score off him, otherwise we're not going to get any runs. So that didn't help Moeen. But as I said, he still had a fantastic summer, just wasn't quite his test match with the ball. Now, Chris Wokes, he was underdone, and I think this was pretty expected. The fact of the matter is, he'd only played 1 county game since coming back from injury, and it showed. He bowled the least amount of overs in the first innings, and he bowled just the 12 overs in the second when all the other bowlers bowled double that. That is Moeen Ali, Stuart Broad, and Jimmy Anderson. So really, it's clear that he wasn't up to the optimal fitness needed, which begs the question, why did England pick him? And obviously it was with an eye to the Ashes. I think if they wanted to win this game, the best possible chance to win this game, they would have picked Toby Rowland-Jones. But obviously the Ashes is a huge priority for England, and I feel this was a questionable decision at the end of the day. Perhaps a bit of complacency, no doubt, creeping in there, but I thought Chris Woakes started well in the first innings, but he faded quite quickly. The pace was down. He wasn't getting it through, because that was the big thing when Chris Woakes started his Test career to last summer. The big difference was his pace was up, and so he was really able to get a lot more wickets. But again, his pace was down in this game, and that meant that he wasn't really as penetrative as he had been last summer. Just got the 2 wickets in this game, and he was on the more expensive side, conceding more than 3.5 runs and over in both innings. Obviously, Chris Woakes is a guy that England want to use, and he's a good all-round cricketer, but he needs more games under his belt. It's as simple as that, and definitely there'll be question marks over whether he should play the third game now that it is a decider and the pressure really is on. Ben Stokes, he bowled really well in the first innings. I thought he toiled away. He bowled 25 overs, 2 for 63. With Ben Stokes, he's an impact bowler. His consistency is not his best attribute, but I thought in this innings he was really consistent, and in the second innings he really wasn't asked to bowl much, which was a bit surprising, because England really needed a wicket. Stokes is a wicket taker, so it was quite surprising to me that he only bowled 5 overs. So that's it for England. Obviously a devastating loss for them. The fielding for them, they were almost as bad as the West Indies. 6 catches they dropped. Alistair Cook, the main culprit, he dropped a couple on the final day, and particularly dropping Craig Brathwaite on 4 really came back to haunt England. They were sloppy in the field, and that is something that you wouldn't usually associate with England, but it just simply wasn't up to Test standard, and that was a big reason why they were unable to close out this game. Having the target of 322, at that point you thought England probably should win this game now, but really their catching was just dismal. The bowling in the second innings as well wasn't good enough. Moeen Ali was not at the level required of a spinner on the 5th day. Yes, his pitch didn't break up as much as you would have thought, but he was disappointed with the ball for the first time this summer. Chris Woakes, he was underdone. Stuart Broad, desperately unlucky, but still not as penetrative as he has been in the past. And Jimmy Anderson, just not the same Jimmy Anderson for some reason. And Ben Stokes really wasn't used. So definitely their bowling in the second innings was left a lot to be desired. The catching, as I talked about, and the batting in the first innings was poor. Cook failed, and then you had the usual suspects failing, and they were left to Ben Stokes and Joe Root to dig them out of the hole. And they were very lucky that the West Indies dropped so many chances to even allow them to get 258. The fact that the West Indies did drop 7 catches in this game, and still England lost this game, not a good sign for England. Inconsistency has plagued them, and they are still not an elite Test team. This team is still not quite clicking. It feels like the individuals are greater than the sum of the parts at the moment with this English team. A lot of really good players, but just not clicking together as a team consistently. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is probably the most controversial thing from the game, and that is Joe Root's declaration. Now, I don't see anything wrong with the declaration. You declared 322, 6 overs to bowl at the West Indies late on that 4th day to put the pressure on them. We know how difficult it is to come out and bat for a few overs at the end of the day. It was an aggressive move by Joe Root. It was with the intent to win the Test match, and that's a good thing for Test cricket, for there to be proactive captains. And really, the bowlers and the fielders let him down at the end of the day. England, I think, should have been able to defend 322. So I don't think you can blame Joe Root for this. I think it was a perfectly reasonable decision. However, I will say this. If this was an Ashes Test, or if this was against India or South Africa, some other big team, would he have done that? I believe not. I believe the fact that it was the West Indies played into his decision-making, just like it did into the decision-making to bring in Chris Woakes. So there was an element of complacency, I feel, from England in this Test match, and they paid for it. But they were just not good enough across all departments at the end of the day. And that's what cost them a damaging defeat for England, and they'll really have to pull their socks up for the Lord Test match starting next Thursday. And I definitely look forward to that one. Hopefully the West Indies can continue to show some improvement and not just revert back to the norm. In terms of changes for that game, England didn't change their squad, interestingly enough, so Tom Wesley gets another go. I think Chris Woakes could be in the firing line, potentially for Toby Rowland-Jones or Mason Crane, maybe. Lords might take a bit of spin, so we might see the leg spinner make a debut, but it would be a bit bizarre if Chris Woakes was dropped from the next game. If you brought him in for this game, surely the intention was to play him for the two to get him ready for the Ashes. So really, if that happened, it would show that England completely messed this up with Chris Woakes. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there. For the West Indies, I doubt they'll make a change to the winning combination. However, there are still question marks in that team we've talked about. Much like the English batting lineup with guys like Stoneman, Wesley, and Malan, there's still question marks over guys like Kieran Powell, Carl Hope, and Shane Dowrich. But I believe they'll get another go. And Devendra Bishu, despite not having the best of games, I think he'll continue because Lords usually does take some spin. So that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, you can check it out. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. All those links can be found on the Twitter page. And as always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.